Many attempts have been made to translate the Bible into modern English, which in this context is defined as the form of English in use after 1800. Development of modern English Bible versions. The Authorized King James Version of 1611 was sporadically altered until 1769, but was not thoroughly updated until the creation of the Revised Version in 1885. It was not until the Revised Standard Version of 1952 that a rival to the KJV was composed, nearly 350 years after the KJV was first published. The RSV gained widespread adoption among the mainstream Protestant churches in America, and a Catholic edition was released in 1962. It was updated as the New Revised Standard Version in 1989. In the late 20th century, Bibles increasingly appeared that were much less literal in their approach to translation. In 1946, the New English Bible was initiated in the United Kingdom, intended to enable readers to better understand the King James Bible. In 1958, J.B. Phillips produced an edition of the New Testament letters in paraphrase, the letters to young churches, so that members of his youth group could understand what the New Testament authors had written. In 1966, Good News for Modern Man, a non-literal translation of the New Testament, was released to wide acceptance. Others followed suit. The Living Bible, released in 1971, was published by its author Kenneth N. Taylor, based on the literal American Standard Version of 1901. Taylor had begun because of the trouble his children had in understanding the literal text of the King James Bible. His work was at first intended for children, but was later positioned for marketing to high school and college students, as well as adults wishing to better understand the Bible. Like Phillips' version, the Living Bible was a dramatic departure from the King James Version. Despite widespread criticism due to being a paraphrase rather than a translation, the popularity of the Living Bible created a demand for a new approach to translating the Bible into contemporary English called dynamic equivalence, which attempts to preserve the meaning of the original text in a readable way. Realizing the immense benefits of a Bible that was more easily accessible to the average reader, and responding to the criticisms of the Living Bible, the American Bible Society extended the Good News for Modern Man to the Good News Bible by adding the Old Testament in this more readable style. This translation has gone on to become one of the best-selling in history. In 1996, a new revision of Taylor's Living Bible was published. This new living translation is a full translation from the original languages rather than a paraphrase of the Bible. Another project aimed to create something in between the very literal translation of the King James Bible and the more informal Good News Bible. The goal of this was to create a Bible that would be scholarly yet not overly formal. The result of this project was the New International Version. This version became highly popular in evangelical Protestant circles. The debate between the formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence translation styles has increased with the introduction of inclusive language versions. Various terms are employed to defend or attack this development, such as feminist, gender-neutral, or gender-accurate. New editions of some previous translations have been updated to take this change in language into account, including the New Revised Standard Version, the Revised English Bible, and today's New International Version. Some translations have approached the issue more cautiously, such as the English Standard Version. A further process that has assisted in increasing the number of English Bible versions exponentially is the use of the Internet in producing virtual Bibles, of which a growing number are beginning to appear in print, especially given the development of print on demand. Today, there is a range of translations ranging from the most literal, such as the Young's literal translation, to the most free, such as the Message and the Word on the Street, 18th and 19th century translations, 20th and 21st century translations, King James Version and derivatives. The King James Version of 1769 still has an immense following, and as such there have been a number of different attempts to update or improve upon it. The English Revised Version and its derivatives also stem from the King James Version. English Revised Version and derivatives. The English Revised Version was the first official attempt to update the King James Version of 1769. This was adapted in the United States as the American Standard Version. The translations and versions that stemmed from them are shown in Dated New International Version and derivatives. The popular New International Version has appeared in a number of editions. Dynamic translations and paraphrases. A significant aspect in translations from the latter half of the 20th century was much greater use of the principles of dynamic equivalence. Internet-based translations. The New English Translation is a project to publish a translation of the Bible using the Internet. It is freely available and accompanied by extensive translator's notes. Another is the Work of God's Children Illustrated Bible, which uses a collaborative media wiki website that interlinks the words of the Bible to articles and image galleries about the topic. The Open English Bible aims to create the first modern public domain English translation of the Bible, using an open-source process for corrections and modernizing verses. Messianic translations. Some Bible translations find popular use in or were prepared especially for the Messianic Judaism movement. New English Bible and derivatives. The initiative to create the New English Bible began in 1946, in an attempt to make an entirely new translation of the Bible in modern English. Public domain translations. Catholic translations. One released in parts between 1913 to 1935 with copious study and textual notes. The New Testament with condensed notes was released in 1936 as one volume. 2 NT released in 1941. The OT contained material from the Shalona revision until the entire OT was completed in 1969. This Old Testament went on to be the base for the 1970 NAB 3 New Testament only Gospels by James Kleist, rest by Joseph Lilly. 4 Second Catholic Edition release 2006, in addition to the above Catholic English Bibles, all of which have an imprimatur granted by a Catholic bishop. The authors of the Catholic Public Domain version of 2009 and a 2013 translation from the Septuagint by Jesuit priest Nicholas King refer to them as Catholic Bibles. These versions have not been granted an imprimatur, but do include the Catholic biblical canon of 73 books. Sacred Name translations. These Sacred Name Bibles were all done with the specific aim of carrying into English the actual name of God as they were in the originals. Most have been done by people from the Sacred Name movement. They are distinguished by the policy of transliterating Hebrew-based forms for sacred names, such as Yahweh, YHWH, etc. Masoretic text. Jewish translations. Jewish translations follow the Masoretic text, and are usually published in bilingual editions with the Hebrew text facing the English translation. The translations often reflect traditional Jewish exegesis of the Bible, as translations of the Masoretic Bible. Jewish translations contain neither the Apocrypha nor the Christian New Testament. Septuagint translations. Simplified English Bibles. There have been a number of attempts to produce a Bible that greatly simplifies the English. These are translations that are not necessarily a very dynamic translation, but go beyond simply everyday English into a restricted vocabulary set. often aimed at non-native speakers of English. Translations exclusively published by Jehovah's Witnesses. Translations exclusively published by the Latter-day Saints movement. Adaptive retellings. Some versions have been labeled adaptive retelling as they take many liberties with the form of the text. Other translations, partial translations,